Have you ever had someone unload their entire life story onto you out of nowhere and you just feel completely drained after? Or you're talking to someone new, they're doing great, and suddenly they tell you everything about their ex, and it's all of this unloaded trauma. Well, you're not alone, and thank you for being here. I posted on my Instagram a poll of what you guys want to listen to on my podcast. So, thank you for being here and thank you for voting for this episode because I've been diving deep into this topic recently. I don't know why. Well, actually, I do know why because I actually ended up researching it and figuring it out. At first, I was like, I don't know why all these people are trauma dumping on me recently. Like, a past friend and like a person I went on a date with. And I'm like, why does this keep happening? And so I went a little bit deeper and then I asked if you guys wanted an episode on this, and a lot of you guys voted yes. So that means that you guys are going through this too. So today we're going to be talking about the difference between trauma dumping versus healthy emotional communicating because there is a difference. And then how trauma dumping can make you feel, how you can identify it, and then what steps you can do to fix this in your life. Because what it really comes down to is protecting your peace and communicating your needs and setting boundaries without feeling guilty about it. This is something that a lot of us have a hard time doing. And I am one of them. So I'm right here with you. I just want to say before getting into this episode, I really don't want to get this confused with not sharing anything at all. Whether you are very new to someone or you're in a long term relationship, you're like years in, I don't want you to take from this episode to be like, okay, I'm not going to communicate anything at all because then I'm just trauma dumping. Like, that's not what this is. That's why I'm going to describe the difference because in order to maintain a healthy relationship, the main key is to communicate. And when you're with someone new, communicating is also important. So they understand you, you understand them, and you get to know them on a deeper level. But there is a line to it, and understanding social awareness and checking in with that person and going from there. So I just wanted to say that first because you don't want to end up resenting your partner or your friend just because you never took action to actually say how you're feeling about it. Because we often end up resenting someone if we don't say anything about it. So, let's talk about the difference between trauma dumping versus healthy emotional sharing because this is super important, whether this is with a friend or a romantic partner. So, healthy emotional sharing to me means that someone is sharing something about their past or their current feelings and thoughts to you in a way that is respectful and honest. You then validate how they feel by creating a safe space while also clearly communicating your needs and respecting boundaries as well. So it's a two-way street where the both of you are checking in with each other and you're both feeling supported rather than one person just unloading everything onto you without checking in. And it's just like in extreme detail that you really don't need to know all the details for, and them then expecting you to fix it. That's the key to trauma dumping is when they're expecting you to fix it. Of course, we want to be there for our person or friend, but we are also not their therapist, and there's a line between being there for them as a friend and then us becoming now drained and now it's a burden on us. And so some people also may not even realize they're trauma dumping on you because you're allowing it. And that's why I'm going to talk about how to fix this and what you can do from there. So I just want to give an example, like a brief conversational example here of what this looks like because I can explain it, but I want you to actually understand because you might actually be the person that's trauma dumping, or you might be the person listening to this that's receiving the trauma dumping. So, what does this look like? Because this happened to me recently. So, wait, before I go into this, I often also notice when someone is trauma dumping, it's more of them complaining and it's very negative. And when it's something more healthy and emotional connection, it's more so that they are very mature about it and positive and they're telling you about their past, but they're not like talking shit on other people. They're not bringing out the negatives, if that makes sense. So, this is what it looks like. They say, this is unhealthy. This one is trauma dumping. They say, yeah, so my ex is a piece of shit. She cheated on me and it's still bothering me to this day. And I bring it into my new relationships and now I get really anxious. And then you're like, oh, I'm so sorry. I'm here for you. Like you're like kind and compassionate. And they just keep going and they're like, yeah, and then this happened where she like did this thing to me and I was emotionally traumatized and it caused me like to feel this way, blah blah. And you just kind of keep allowing it and you're just like, "Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm here for you. I'm open." Or like, "Have you tried doing this? Have you tried doing that?" And it's like you're never really saying in that conversation, okay, like this is kind of a lot for me to handle. And you might be too nice and kind and you're just taking it all in. And they just keep talking and talking and talking. And not once in that conversation have they checked in on you and been like, yeah, so how are you feeling now? Like, no. They're just, and then the worst part of the conversation is when they go, yeah, so like, what should I do? And then they don't take your advice. So that's kind of annoying. But then let's compare this to a healthy emotional connection. So this could be a conversation where you like first meet someone and you're starting to get to know each other on a deeper level. Then this is what healthy emotional connection looks like is yeah, I did go through a relationship that caused me some triggers, but I did go to therapy for it and it actually allowed me to reflect on myself a lot and whatever. And you're also very kind and compassionate. And you're like, wow, that's amazing. Like, how do you feel now? Or whatever. And I'm here for you, whatever. And then they're like, yeah, I learned about myself a lot through it and it wasn't easy and like blah blah blah, but how are you feeling? Like have you ever been in a relationship before? And so like now it's kind of reciprocated where like they're checking in on you and you're checking in on them and it feels very mutual, okay? So I just want you to get like an understanding here, the difference. So let's talk about now that you understand the difference, why people are trauma dumping in the first place. Because you might be like, why does everybody always come to me and unload everything? Like, I can't handle it anymore. So, there's a few reasons. There's four that I'm going to say. Number one is you might be an empathy magnet. This means that you are just so kind and compassionate and you're a very good listener and you make people feel very safe. And this is a great trait to have. I am also this way. I'm very welcoming with people and people feel very comfortable around me. This is great to have. The downside to this is because you're so compassionate and you're empathetic, this person does not realize they're being a burden onto you because you're never communicating how you're actually feeling and you're just allowing them to just like unload all of it. Number two is unintentional signals. So there's, like I said, a lack of clear boundaries where this person thinks that you're always available to talk for heavy conversations. Like, not just like you're always available. Like, no, you're always available for heavy conversations. And like, there's a difference. And so the thing is that are we always available for heavy conversations? Most likely no. Like each of us have a job and something that we are going through ourselves that to then take on someone else's in addition every single day can feel overwhelming. So they might think you're always available when in reality you're not. Number three is their lack of awareness. So some people just don't realize that they're oversharing and how it's affecting you. And this might be something that they need to become more aware of, and that's where you need to communicate that. But I'm going to go into later what exactly you can say as an example. And then number four, this one kind of goes more so for like people in long-term friendships or relationships where like you were there for them in the past, and now they think that because you were there for them before, they think it's okay to unload all of this now, when really it's not. So this might be like a few years ago, you were really there for them when they went through something, and now it's like they think that you're going to be there again. And obviously we want to be there for our friends, but there's a limit to where it gets us to now feeling like, "Oh my God, I can't handle this." So, how is this all affecting you, and how can you start to identify if this is becoming too much for you to handle? So, after you have a conversation with them, you might feel emotionally exhausted. You might feel drained after having conversations with them because you just poured all of your energy into them and you didn't leave anything else for yourself. I want to repeat this so that you fully understand. After a conversation, if you are feeling emotionally drained and exhausted, it is because you poured everything that you have into them by helping them, and you left nothing for yourself. The reason why this is so important is because you need energy for yourself in order to show up for yourself every day at your job, in your relationships, when you work out, making your meals. Like having everything that we do requires energy. And if we're just putting it all into someone else, we need to leave room for ourselves. And then another sign that you might be getting trauma dumped on is you might be feeling very overwhelmed after talking to them. I know that I had a really good and deep conversation with someone when I leave them feeling really deeply connected and uplifted and almost energized. You can have a very deep conversation with someone about your past and leave the conversation feeling energized and uplifted and more connected. Like that is possible. But if it's trauma dumping, you are leaving the conversation feeling exhausted and overwhelmed. Another sign is that you might have difficulty focusing on your own needs. So, like I said, you put so much energy into them that you are now having a hard time even focusing or a hard time even having the energy to do the things that you need to do. And these are daily things: going to the gym, making your meals, doing your job at work. Like, all of this is energy. And you need to be able to focus on it. And if you're pouring everything into them, you're not able to have any for your daily tasks, which is really important. So, now, how do we set boundaries with these people without feeling guilty? You want to know your limits. So, after hearing all these signs about identifying it, now that you know what it feels like and looks like to be the one receiving the trauma dumping, know your limits. So, like, you can be there for this person. It's not that you can't be there for them at all, but as soon as you start to feel exhausted or overwhelmed, you then need to be able to cut that off and be like, okay, an example of what you can say to now communicate is like setting firm boundaries and being like, I care about you, but I'm not in the right space to talk about this deeply right now. Because what if it's like 10 o'clock at night and this person's calling you or texting you and they're telling you, sending you paragraphs about stuff, and you're like trying to go to bed? Because this has happened to me. And it is really hard to cut off the conversation, but you're not being a bitch by just simply communicating and setting boundaries. It might feel that way at first because it's out of your comfort zone, but in reality, you are setting boundaries, and there's nothing that you should feel bad about by doing that. Another example of what you can say to them if you are understanding your limits, you're starting to identify how you're feeling and you need to cut it off, is this sounds heavy. Have you thought about speaking to a therapist about it? Because that's not like I don't believe that that's putting them down. I think that's like showing them, oh, okay, they should then know right there is like, okay, I need to back off now. And they should also start to get the hint of maybe I shouldn't be unloading all of this onto them. And maybe I should go to therapy for this so that I have like a professional to talk about this with. Because the thing is that you can be their friend, you can be their partner, but you are not their therapist. You should not be taking on all their trauma. They should be going to either therapy or at least working through it through themselves by journaling or meditating or some type of action. And then if they need to go to you for advice or go to you and vent for a minute, but like it's reciprocated, that's fine. So after saying those statements, hopefully they get the hint. But if they don't and you feel like nothing is working, my last option for you, if you're like really invested in this relationship, you don't want to let them go, another option of what you can do is to set time boundaries. So if they start to call you or text you or they want to meet up with you, you got to be like, hey, I only have 10 minutes to talk. And then, like, that's it. Like, you don't have to, like I said, you don't have to be a bitch. You don't have to be like, you only get 10 minutes. But setting this up so they know, oh, okay, she's busy. She has a lot going on. I can't like take up all this time because at the end of the day we don't have all the time in the world. We can't just sit here and talk to you for 3 hours and then when am I supposed to get done the things I need to get done? Or even if you don't even have any tasks that you need to do, but maybe you just had a really hard week and you just need to decompress, even setting a time boundary for that. Like you're saying, I only have 10 minutes. You don't need to say what you're doing. You just need to say, I only have 10 minutes. Let's hear it. And then you get 10 minutes and then we're done. Okay. You can also try to redirect the conversation. So if they're like, yeah, and this is what happened at work, and like, I just can't believe that this happened, and blah, 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 you can be like, oh, I went for a walk today, and it's really nice outside. Like, have you been for a walk today? And like, gently try to redirect the conversation, like, oh, like, what are you doing this weekend? Oh my God, look at the trees out there, they look like they're blooming again. I don't know. You know what I'm saying? Like try to redirect a little bit. Okay. Also, like I said, try to encourage professional help. Not everybody agrees with therapy or even believes in therapy. That's your own thing. That's fine. But if you can at least try to encourage it, something that I did learn though from a Mel Robbins podcast that I do want to briefly mention here is you cannot change someone and you cannot fix someone. So you can't force someone to go to therapy. You can't just be like, you need to go to therapy because they might not listen to you. They might become defensive and they might be like, oh, like, what do I, is something wrong with me? Like they actually will probably more likely not go to therapy if you're the one forcing it upon them and being like, you need to go to therapy. Instead, what Mel Robbins was saying that I found to be like so genius is that you need to, instead of like directly putting it at them, like kind of like indirectly talk about it and be like, make it sound fun and easy and be like, yeah, I went to therapy and I healed a lot of my trauma. And then that will kind of like get them to start thinking like, oh, she went to therapy and it worked for her. Like maybe I should try that. Because if they're seeing that someone else did something and you're making it look simple and fun, and you were like, yeah, like I've learned a lot about myself. My relationships are a lot better now. That might get them to do it because at the end of the day, whoever this person is that's trauma dumping you is an adult and they are the one that's in control of their own actions and they need to be the one that's taking action, not you. You cannot control someone or fix someone, especially if you're giving them advice and they're just taking it and then they're not even applying it or doing anything and then you're even more frustrated. Like you just can't force that upon them and they will do what they need to do when they are ready. That's the main thing here is like I mean to be honest, like no one's ever ready for anything, but like one day they will take action, and maybe today's not the day, but one day they will. And that's when you need to ask yourself, who is this person? Like, is it a friend? Is it a partner? And like, is this person so valuable to me that I want to keep them in my life? Or is it someone that's more new and you're just like, I just met this person. I mean, I'm not really looking for anything serious. I don't really want to add more onto my plate right now. I'm just going to let go because it might get to a point where you just need to focus on yourself and protect your own peace and control what you can control instead of focusing on controlling them. And what you can control is cutting them off and letting go of them. And you can do that in a way that's peaceful and mature, but that's what I've had to do. To be completely honest, I went on a date. Like, I have a story. So I went on a date like in December with someone and nothing serious. I'm just like having fun, whatever. And it went really well, and they were really nice, and they were really kind, and they were such a gentleman. So, like, the impression was great at first. And then after like a month, out of nowhere, they started trauma dumping on me and just basically telling me every single detail about their past relationship and what their ex did to them, and just so much detail that I did not need to know, but he was putting it on to me, and it was nonstop. Like, it was like every day out of nowhere. It was like apparently he got triggered from us hanging out or talking or whatever, that it reminded him of his past relationship or something. And so then he basically ended up just getting triggered and then taking it all out on me. And at first, I was that compassionate, empathetic person. And that's why he was trauma dumping on me, because I was being too nice and not setting boundaries and being like, listen, this is too much for me. And so it went on for like from the first day that he started trauma dumping, it literally he wouldn't stop talking about it for like a week straight. And then it got to the point where I was like, listen, I cannot take this on. Like, this sounds like very heavy. I literally said word for word these examples that I gave you. Like, this sounds like a lot. I think, maybe he was going to therapy. That's the funny part. But this sounds like a lot. Like, maybe you can talk to your therapist about it. Like, I'm here for you, but I don't have the emotional capacity to be talking about this. And I honestly don't think I really need to know about all of this in this deep of detail, because I was happening to go through a really hard week at work where like there was just a lot going on. And so I was overwhelmed and I was not having enough energy for myself. And I just was in a horrible mood. I was miserable. I was drained. And I'm like, this is just not how it's supposed to feel when you are connecting with someone. Like, whether you're looking for someone or not, it's not supposed to feel draining and annoying. You're supposed to feel connected and lifted, because the problem is he was pouring out on me, and not once did he check in on me and say, how are you doing though? Like, how are you feeling? No, it was just like constant, constant. And I'm like, what is going on here? I don't get it. And so that's where I let go. And I'm like, I'm sorry, this isn't going to work anymore. And I just stopped answering. Like, no, I can't. I mean, maybe it's not that easy for you, and this is like a long-term relationship or like a friendship that you're in, but I'm just like giving you a story of what's been going on in my life, because I want you to feel like, one, you're not alone, and two, that this does happen to a lot of people and there is something you can do about it. So, you are not responsible for carrying someone else's emotional load, and protecting your peace is one of the best forms of self care that you can practice. And I want you to remember that out of this episode. If there is anything that you can take from this episode, it is that right there to protect your peace. And I now want you to be able to apply this episode to yourself and your life. So, something that you can do as a journal prompt is, what are 3 ways that I can better protect my emotional energy? And write that down. It doesn't have to be a paragraph, it could literally just be a few words. But I just want you to try this prompt out and see how you feel. I also invite you to share them either with me, or you could, if you want to share a story with me or DM me and tell me if this episode was helpful for you, or if you have my phone number, you're one of my friends, you can text me. But I really just want to be able to connect with you and hear how this advice was for you and if you were able to apply it for yourself. So, thank you guys for listening and voting for this episode, because I am so happy I was able to help you, but I was also able to help myself because I'm like, what is going on here? It was like one guy after another, just like trauma dumping, and I'm like, what the heck? So, anyway, thank you for listening. Thank you for listening. And if you found this episode helpful, please share it with someone or tag me on Instagram at Happy For You with Jules. And I wish you guys a lot of healing and peace. See you guys next Thursday. Bye.